And hard work is the fuel to get you there. I want an Africa that is owned, built, championed, and driven by Africans. And until then, our freedom is empty to business. I've always had a thesis on Africa for a long time. And that thesis is rooted in my personal upbringing here in Ghana. 50% interest rates back in the day, things were tough. But then you saw this evolution. You saw this period in which, Africans across the board decided, look, we're going to mature our democracies. We largely had political stability, and we had an emergence of a consuming and middle class. And the bedrock of stability has led to this emergence of growth and opportunity. So seeing that, seeing the demographics in which we're going to have the youngest population globally by 2030, I saw all these different things happening, and I realized that, no, this is the last frontier. And that's why when I originally went to Harvard, I was actually pre-med. Like every good African boy, I was going to be a doctor. But I quickly decided that there was more merit to study in Africa. So I studied African studies and economics, focused on opportunities and development. So when I first got to Harvard, I started a nonprofit actually called the African Development Initiative, now Clean Aqua, and started doing sustainable development projects. Underlying all of this was this still entrepreneurial bug. I'm in a village called Ejimante in Ghana, working with the community, trying to get them clean water and sanitation. And we have a community meeting. And I ask everyone, if I had a World Bank budget and there was a single thing you could do, that I could do for you, what would it be? And I thought, someone would say, look, share $1,000 to everyone in the village, or I probably would have asked for money. It was quite unanimous where they said, look, we want jobs. People want to be economically empowered. And so that really set off, this was 2007, it just set off a philosophical change in my mind where I realized that maybe we're going about this the wrong way, and that the way we need to liberate the continent is not through these handouts and charity, it is through economically empowering people so they're in charge of their own dignity. First hurdle was just convincing people that you can actually do business in Africa. And then was able to raise some capital, our first capital raise of $50,000. And we did corn farming in Afram Plains, 1,000 acres, mechanized farming with imported tractors. And it was a great success. So Golden Palm is actually involved in a number of different sectors, all of which we identify as being high growth. One is agriculture, as I mentioned. Agriculture was the first thing we did. We're involved in aquaculture, where if you look at, and in general, when you look at agriculture, you have what I call a pretty tragic situation on the continent, where we have 60% of the world's arable land. Yet we don't feed ourselves. We're a net importer of food that we can grow on our own land. And so there's an import substitution thesis here that says that we should be able to grow and get involved in our own production, not just the production of food, but also the processing, because you want value add. And so, we're involved in aquaculture. We're involved in agro-processing of baby food and gluten-free flour through Stawi in Kenya. Just a few days ago, I was in Lagos launching Stawi Nigeria. We're going to expand Stawi to Nigeria. We're also going to, expand Stawi to Ghana in the near future. And the idea is promoting this intra-Africa trade, intra-Africa investments, and creating a Pan-African platform. How can we take what we see in Kenya and expand it to Nigeria, take what we learn in Nigeria, expand it to Ghana, and vice versa? So that's in agriculture. We're looking at, actually in Jos, one of the deals I'm looking at is potentially going into processing in Jos. Because my thesis on the nonsense going on is we need to address that not just politically, but we need to address that with creating economic empowerment. Because political instability, terrorism, and all those things breed where there's poverty. And if we solve poverty, we'll be able to solve a lot of these political issues. So we're looking at a number of opportunities there in Nigeria.
Via Campesina is an organization of small farmers. We have 150 organizations in 150 in 70 countries. We are here in Durban today to say no to the carbon market, no to agriculture in the negotiation. We are here to see agroecology, food sovereignty can cool down the planet.
What types of problems are you seeing in Haiti today?
In Haiti now we are facing a lot of problem. Corporation like Monsanto want to kill our seeds, our agriculture, and Via Campesina in Haiti, in around the world, we are fighting against agro-fuel. We are fighting for peasant agriculture, for food sovereignty. In Haiti, big corporation want to take our land to produce agro-fuel. We need our land to produce food for more than 10 million people in the country.
Do you think these negotiations are making a difference?
I don't think so. I was in Copenhagen, I was in Cancun. It's always the same things. It's a conference of polluters. People are talking about money, but not really a solution to the climate change. It's a big market to sell carbon, and we are here to say no. We need to change the system of food production. The industrial agriculture heats up the planet. We want to, all around the world, small agriculture, family agriculture, to cool down the planet.
Thank you.
And I kind of took a big, how do we do this? So I put a subtitle under it, Its Potential for Agroecological Intensification. Now, I push a button on here. Where do I push a button? Please. This one. Oh, thank you very much. This one. Okay. Some of you will be familiar with my dear husband, who is Dr. Twalda Burhan. And then the other people there are in my team.
Sue,
Sorry.
you need to be...
Oh, I beg your pardon. I'm not used to this kind of thing. No.
Because
right.
otherwise they can't hear you.
Yeah,
on
I
the
can't.
internet.
I beg you. Oh, yes, we're doing this, aren't we? Across. Oh, yes. Beg your pardon. Excuse me, people outside there. Right. My dear husband is Dr. Twalda Burhan, the equivalent of the environment minister in Ethiopia, and the Hailu Araya, Fanto Ejigul, and Arif Aini Asmalash are my real drivers. Okay. Now, this book actually, this presentation is based on a chapter from a book which FAO, Nadia Shalaba of FAO and Limli Ching of TWN, myself managed to actually pull together and get published last year. It's called Climate Change and Food Systems Resilience in Sub-Saharan Africa, and Twalda and I contributed the first chapter. Now, what are Africa's challenges in meeting food security? Africa is generally regarded as a basket case for agricultural products, except it ships out an awful lot of high-value stuff to the developed world. One of the challenges, which people don't see because of the way world maps are drawn, is that Africa is the second largest continent after Asia. It is over 3,000 million hectares. 1/3 of that is dry. 2/3 of it are not dry. Hence, its agriculture is not monolineal, it is highly diverse. And I'll come back to that. It has both traditional knowledge and genetic resources, which are highly undervalued and poorly studied. And I'll make my traditional plug here for sorghum. Everybody pushes maize, but maize is not Africa's crop. Sorghum is Africa's crop. And unfortunately, in the 1960s, 70s, IDRC supported good research in sorghum, and then it went under the table, except in supplying animal feed for American food factories. Africa is also the least populated of all the continents, and you can't do development unless you have people. The Congo Democratic Republic is the size of Europe, but has a population the same size as Belgium. Another of Africa's challenges, but it's also an opportunity, is it's very young. 75% of the population is under 30. But it has lost and continues to lose countless people, lost in the past through the slave trade, and it continues to lose its brightest and best to the brain drain. Why? Because infrastructure investment in Africa has been pathetic, despite many schemes like the intercontinental road system, etc. The only place you get infrastructure is where there are extractive industries, particularly minerals. And we have a very poor R&D investment. Hence, our brightest and best don't want to stay in Africa unless they're dedicated, again, like my dear husband and some of his others I know. And unfortunately, because of this, it is continuously disturbed by conflict. And you cannot have development without peace and security. Now, very fortunately in Ethiopia, since 1991, we have now more than 20 years of peace. And our development, we're now one of the fastest developing countries in Africa. It's over around 11% a year. So I think, and we're also highly populated. We're the third most populous country in the continent. But let me go back to Africa's agricultural diversity. This is from a study done for FAO by a gentleman called Dixon and colleagues, published in 2001 on agricultural systems of the world and their relationship to poverty. And I suspect there's a kind of button thing. Well, I may, I'll stop talking, I'll come to this. But you see the patterns here? Yes, we do have linear groups. That's across the Sahara, and there's the big Sahara in the middle. But just look at the area south of the Sahara, how complicated and diverse that is. And this is a map produced in 1983 for UNESCO by Professor White, Oxford University. These are the Floristic Regions, or the regions of regional endemism. This is in plant, he looked at it for plants. Somebody called Jonathan Kingdom looked at it from the point of view of animals. The correlation is very high. So you could...
I wish to thank CSIS and Jennifer Cook for hosting the ARC board at this wonderful facility in partnership with USAID. Now, we have just celebrated our 25th year anniversary. 25 years ago, policies in Africa were made on heuristics, judgments, and ideologies, and very little base relating to evidence base and rigor. So ARC actually came into existence to fill that gap. And what I would like to do is actually talk about a couple of very innovative mechanisms that the ARC employed at the initial stages, and then how progressively moved into other initiatives. Beginning with research, 25 years ago, we came up with 5 separate teams. And what goes on is that we get researchers from around the continent at some place in Africa, because it's a pan-African organization, and then assemble these researchers in 5 separate rooms. They present research in various stages of development, and then they review each other. And we call that a peer review mechanism. And over time, this peer review mechanism has been monitored by resource individuals from around the globe. In fact, that's how I got engaged with the ARC. Then the collaboration amongst researchers who have actually gone through this peer review mechanism and resource people from around the globe to actually work on big issues that could not be conducted by one individual. Issues on climate change, food security, and so on. This collaborative framework then became a foundation for innovating collaborative training programs. So we have collaborative masters in economics. We have collaborative PhD program also in economics, where thesis presentations are actually done in the same peer review biannual workshop. Now, with reference to this biannual workshop, which actually occurs twice a year, attracting the largest contingents of economists from Africa, we had a variety of side meetings, one of which is known as Plenary Conference. This is a conference based on a contemporary topic of policy interest and based on thought leaders from anywhere around this globe, and with the purpose of actually exposing our researchers to best practices. Now, we have been in existence for 25 years, which means that we can actually show and witness some long-term payoffs from capacity building, because the business of ARC is capacity building to advance research and training to inform economic policies. So one of the consequences of capacity building is actually at this podium. You have Mthuli Ncube, who is Chief Economist and Vice President of the African Development Bank. Beno Ndulu was the second actually Executive Director of the ARC, and 8 to 9 other governors of central banks who have actually gone through this program, who have been nurtured, and actually you find ARC alumni everywhere in the continent. I was mentioning today at the board meeting, I didn't quite appreciate it until once I stepped into the research department of the Kenya Central Bank, and I was actually looking for data. And at that time, I was not in this position. And I find that every researcher there, every employee there has an ARC stamp, basically ARC, including the governor of Central Bank of Kenya. So this is an organization which has become actually a true African success story. What I told you was the long-term consequences of what ARC has achieved over time, but we also mix that with short-term approaches and mechanisms where we take the collaborative research, as I mentioned earlier, and disseminate that to policymakers. We have senior policymakers consisting of governors of central banks, ministers of finance, in the same room, dialoguing on the collaborative research. And we do that for 2 purposes, one of which is that we are introducing what has been researched to policymakers. And at the same time, we're getting feedback from them, which will in turn actually help us design or redesign what we're doing. And so we have senior policy seminars at the continental level. And then as a result of these papers that have been developed, we combine those with country case studies. And from that, we identify issues of particular concern to particular countries, and then we actually conduct national workshops. So apart from long-term consequences, we also have we can actually point to a variety of collaborative projects which have more direct interface with policy. For instance, there was a project on poverty and growth syndrome led by one of our global resource persons, Eric Torbeck of Cornell University, which actually was used to inform poverty reduction strategies adopted by many African countries. Now, the other is I have a friend, Gail Martin. She's from the World Bank. The World Bank and the African Economic Research Consortium actually partnered on this highly successful project called Service Delivery Indicators. And that has been actually inaugurated in a number of countries, Kenya. I think the next one is Nigeria. So those are just a couple of examples in terms of this interface between research and policy. Now, I want to be brief now. Moving forward, this is an organization that has done so much, that has created so much value, but it is poised to get and move to the next level of excellence. We are going to capitalize on advancing technology to integrate technology in all of ARC's operations, and also these collaborative training programs to take full advantage of blended learning and so on. And then the whole area of communication. The organization has become so complex. So you have guys in research not communicating with training, and so we're actually creating synergy across various products and services of the ARC. We are also going to get out of the old public domain mentality of what we've been doing to get more robust engagement with the private sector. And then I'm going to end here. Thank you.